For our Africa this Sunday, we take a moment to remember another son of the soil who has since transitioned. Cape Town based multi instrumentalist Tony Cedras was a member of Pacific Express, Spirits Rejoice, Oswetie, and the Medu Art Ensemble. His path led him to spend 3 decades in the US, eventually returning home in 2013. He is admired internationally by more audiences and peers than perhaps South Africans can be aware of. And Tony was a towering talent, both as a player and a composer. Was also a touring musician for Paul Simon, Cassandra Wilson, and has even been featured on Pharaoh Sanders Save Our Children. We reflect on this life this Sunday. Joining us for this conversation, multi-instrumentalist and friend of the K-Jazz Show, Mark Fransman. Welcome back to the K-Jazz Show.
Hey, Gogo, how are you?
Fantastic. Happy Sunday to you, sir. And of course,
Yeah,
we are celebrating, the life and times of Tony, you and I, as we remember, we reflect, also be sharing some of his music. But let's talk about, your experience
mm,
with Tony, your first encounter with the man.
yeah. So you said that, when he came back in 2013,
Yeah.
I met him just during that time, obviously, having spent most of his professional life, um, after the 90s in the States, from the 80s actually.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I immediately, when he moved back to Cape Town, for some or other reason, I was on his radar and I was grateful that I was. Um, I've always also just made myself available to a lot of musicians in that way, you know what I mean? For
Yeah.
me, it's always when musicians like when Hotep or any Bra Hotep or Tony came back to Cape Town, we always like, the local musicians were always there, obviously, just to rally around them and also to be fed
Mm.
by their experiences, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
All of them. I mean, and Bratoni wasn't any different. I think a lot of us relished his come home his homecoming. And anyway, when he came back to Cape Town, uh, I think one of the most beautiful things was when he started his recording the album Love Letters to Cape Town.
Yes.
You know,
Mm.
that album, hey man, I don't know. I was so grateful when he called me for that album, Up till that time, we had worked together, on the scene. He was very much happy to be back with his family and his children. So, it was a good time, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then when he did call me, I was so impressed. I mean, working with a musician live, there's some YouTube clips that I've been watching recently of me and him actually in duet. And what's crazy is like it's like I met someone that I knew all my life.
Yeah.
First of all, obviously, the man is an incredible multi-instrumentalist. I mean, this is the funny thing about me and Tony is that I guess besides all the other things that we share, that's the one thing. Tony is and was a multi-instrumentalist of the highest order. If he played piano, it was pianistic and incredibly beautiful in his approach. If he played trumpet, it's the same thing. You know what I mean? The man he was virtuosic. For me to have met a man, and obviously I, in my own right, in my own journey,
Yeah.
I've pursued that kind of idea of my musicality.
Mm.
And then when I heard him sing, I was like, oh, dang. Dang, man. It's like, so to be quite honest, when I heard of his passing, all these memories of him as a sonic citizen, if you
Mm.
will, if you would, I
Mm.
like to use that word for people that inhabit that world so well, of sound,
Yeah.
they proper citizens of that world. I don't know, man. To me, this man, his passing has maybe left this kind of a sense of loneliness for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wanted to talk a little bit more
It's,
about, his work,
yeah.
Mark. And I mean, he's been a part of quite a number of ensembles, both locally and internationally, and collaborated the same way
Mhm.
as well. Which for you are some of the contributions that will always stand out?
Pacific Express, I'll just, look, hey, you know, we know each other now, so my love and my extension of the tradition. I
Mm,
loved everything that Tony did, but I think, when I heard like songs of his, like in Ghana, I was, like, or those songs that he recorded with Pacific Express, Pacific Express. It was
mm,
just like, being from Cape Town, all those musicians being from Cape Town. I'm a Cape Town boy.
mm,
It left a huge impression on me. And for talent of that nature to pair himself with the likes of the other talents in that band, well, he's now known as Ibrahim Khalil Shihab, but of Chris Shielder and
mm.
all those other people that was in that band. I mean, for these great talents to have navigated was for me something to uphold as a local musician.
Yeah.
So I would say Pacific Express also because of its yeah, and then it's difficult to choose one, but I will also say that you know I mean I worked with Baba Pharaoh Sanders as well myself, and that's Save Our Children. For me, like I like the fact that Pharaoh also worked with so many other South African musicians in that way.
Yeah.
In that is special for me to listen back to it. I do listen back to it. I also know the spirit, having spent a bit of time with Pharaoh. I know how they would have interacted, and it's a memorable thing, even though I wasn't there to experience it. But when I listen back to it, knowing that those two spirits met, yeah, it's something else, man. Also
Absolutely.
knowing Tony the way I kind of know him, I cannot just say this.
Yeah.
One thing that Tony exuded was a pure and unadulterated playfulness when it came to the music. You know
Mm,
what I mean?
mm.
This man, when these instruments, yeah, it's difficult to quantify him or to describe it in words. But these kind of humans, they radiate something else, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I would like to say that you said something in the introduction that was very, very true.
Mm,
I think this is a case of where a lot of the cats in the know, you know what a huge spirit this was. You know what I mean?
mm.
And it's up there for me. The loss is quite great. I'm feeling it. I am mourning his death for sure.
Yeah.
Not because of just like a sadness, but that this is a special star that we witnessed. You know what I mean? That
That's
came
right.
through the sky.
That's right.
And this light, that light, if it's shone, if you had the opportunity to be englowed in that light of his, wow,
Yeah.
it's not easy to forget. So your in your introduction, when you said that, like the people in, like, maybe not the great, it's a pity that the greater audience didn't know him in that way,
Yeah.
but this was special, man. Cat was very special.
Absolutely. I mean, he's
Special human being.
admired internationally, and
Yeah.
locally it wasn't that, but we salute him. Mark,
Yeah.
as we wrap up
Mm-hmm.
this tribute, how do you
Sure.
want, or how would you like the world to remember Tony?
A ridiculous talent. I would like to the world to remember Tony as a contributor to the oral art form, number one, through composition. He was you see, it's difficult to say. I'll just say this. He was such a multifaceted person. The difficulty becomes, how do you quantify again that word, and I will say
Mm,
this. Number one, it has to go past just talent, and philosophically, Tony was a very deep thinker. He was definitely a man of incredible musical depth, a understanding of music far beyond theoretical explanation, and he should be remembered as someone who, in the living art form, stands as a national treasure. I think most musicians that would have known Tony would agree, and that's how I certainly will remember him as such.
Yeah. And thank you. And thank you for taking the time, to just reflect with us,
Oh,
as we shine his light one more time, and share his music
mhm.
for many years to come. This music, this legacy that he's left behind will stay with
Absolutely.
us, and we'll continue to spread the word and tell the story of another son of the soil who contributed to many years of what we call South African music today. Mark, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Ngoko. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you.